Today, I am extremely excited to welcome you to the channel for a very big reveal. It is something I am incredibly excited and proud to share with you, and that is the release of my own brush set for the channel. If you've been following the channel for the last year, you know that this has been in the works for quite some time. We've been doing tests, we've been doing prototypes. A lot of the lessons that you've watched over the last couple of months have been done with those tests and those prototypes, just fine-tuning and figuring out what exactly we want these brushes to be. And they are finally here. They are finalized and they are dropping later this month. I'll tell you the date a little bit later, specifically in this video, but before we get into that, I would just like to say I have never had a set of brushes that I have adored until right now. If you've been following the channel for the last 8 years, you know that there have been brands of paint that I've recommended, that I have loved, but there's never been a brand or set of brushes that I've said, yes, go out, buy this, because there's never been an individual set that I felt like has given me everything that I wanted in a set. I always buy 3 or 4 different sets, so then I kind of grab from each of them. I'm very picky with my brushes, admittedly. I just think they have such a big impact on the paintings we make. And so we finally went ahead and had our own collection made for this channel. And all of the lessons from here on out will be done with this brush set. So if you're ever watching my videos and you're saying, oh, like, I see that he's using this brush and I see that he's doing it there, and I have a similar brush, but it's not really getting the same effect done, you never have to go through that process of second guessing that again, because you can just have the exact same brush that I'm using and I'm working on. With that, let's talk about the new brush set. Going into it, I had a couple of big requests. The first, I wanted to ensure that I didn't have to sell 20 brushes within the set. I think that often you end up buying brush sets that have so many more brushes than when you actually use, and there's no point in paying for those or having those made. So I said, I want to make a very purposeful brush set with brushes that have a lot of different uses and brushes that I will actually use in my lessons. They said, great, no problem. The second thing I wanted was heavy customization for the brushes, and all of these have been fine-tuned exactly to how I want them, both aesthetically and in utility for the lessons. With that, it is a 5-piece brush set, and we're going to dive into each and every brush here, talk about it, and why I feel is perfect for what we do. The first one is a fan brush, and this is a fairly unique fan brush because when we started with sampling, they sent me soft bristled fan brushes, and I told them, while I appreciate these for subjects like foliage in the midground, what I typically love fan brushes for is very sharp detail in subjects like rocks, distant trees, maybe grass, things of that nature that you need an individual bristles marking on. With that, they said, all right, no problem, we'll work on it, we'll get it to you. And we had some prototypes, now we have the final version. This is what I would consider a very versatile fan brush, because if you don't get it wet, then you have that incredibly sharp marking. It's quite stiff, so they don't condense together to a great degree. But if you get it wet, you dip it in some water, you do get a little bit of that condensing occurring. So you can use it for the very sharp details, but if you also want a fan brush for something like mid-ground foliage, as we talked about, you can use the same brush. The next is a liner brush, otherwise known as a rigger, and this one also had quite a bit of customization done. So initially, they sent me a much shorter bristled variant of what I have here, and my issue with that was that it couldn't pick up enough water to do a fair amount of strokes over a longer period of time, which is something I do look for in my liner or rigger brushes, right? Additionally, by having it longer like this, we can incorporate more of a loose stroke for subjects that we want to have greater randomization in, like grass in the foreground, because if it's longer, then it can be very loose and you can paint from a bit more of a distance. You can incorporate a bit more of an organic look to your piece. So it was really important to me that we extended this. We did extend it, and now it works perfectly. Next, we have a classic filbert brush, and this is something that you've seen me work with on clouds and mist. That rounded corner is really fantastic for rendering those markings. But what I also really love about it is that it can pick up a decent amount of paint, and it has that sharp top. So maybe you're working on the soft area of a cloud, but then you want to incorporate some form into it. You just turn your brush, you get that nice, sharp, clean line, and it's just arguably the most versatile brush in the whole collection, right? So fantastic for just a myriad of uses, and it's also what I consider the perfect size. I've had some of these that were a lot larger. I've had some that have been a lot smaller, and they're never as comfortable as what they are when they are just like this. This one is a 5. Then we have 2 flat-headed brushes, and these ones are by design the same, but different sizes. This first one is a 10, and it's a 10 in my heart. But with that, if you've familiarized yourself with the start of all of my videos, you've probably noticed a commonality, and that is I begin almost all of my lessons with, and today we're going to start with a 1-inch flat-headed brush. We'll dip the bottom third of it into a little bit of water, etc., etc. But it's because I almost always start with this brush. It picks up so much paint, it consistently applies it, which is incredibly important when working on things like skies. You don't want an inconsistent 1-inch brush. And we know what I will say, most brush sets come with a brush like this in this size, but what's important here is the quality, because when you have a brush like this, you are often working on larger blends, softer applications. You don't want streaks, you don't want bristles kind of coming out in different directions and ruining this very clean aesthetic that you are working towards. And that has been a large issue for me in the past with other brands, and that is why I love this one. It's so consistent in its application. It also has just the right amount of give. It's a little bit more on the stiff side, which I do appreciate for a brush like this. And with that, we also have the smaller variant of it. This one used for different scenarios, but it's incredibly sharp, much like the liner brush. But in addition to that, it can pick up a good amount of paint. So it serves a different purpose. And if you're ever working on a cityscape, this is going to be your go-to brush just through the majority of what you're doing. Incredible for architecture, incredible for rendering little windows, details, and it's just so versatile. You can also work on tree branches, distant mountains. There are so many things. There's so many things. And I do need to note this, we are launching with a limited number of these sets. There are only 500. We did that to be safe, but it does mean if you really want it, I would heavily recommend signing up to the email. There's a link in the video description. You can go there, you can enter your email, and that will tell you exactly when the brushes drop, so you can get in there and ensure that you actually end up getting them. I'm mentioning this a little bit later in the video intentionally so that the people who really want them, the people who are dedicated to the channel, the people who are really interested in the brush set, can ensure that they are getting them before the masses and everybody else, because this is the type of thing that typically does sell out, and I just want to make sure that the people who really care about it can get in and get it. So there's a link in the video description. Just click it, throw your email in there, and then when this drops, you will get an email. You will be able to go and buy it, and then we'll be able to work on these lessons together using the exact same brushes, taking the guessing out of, does my brush have the same stiffness as his? Why isn't my brush working as well as his? You know, you don't have to go through that, which is something that really just gets me excited, because I know that can be a frustration, and I love that it's now something that can be entirely alleviated. So that is exciting. That said, before, again, I give you the launch date, I want to tell you why very specifically I decided to partner with Craftamo. Because if you've been following the channel over the last 8 years, you know that I very rarely align myself with other companies. I don't like to take a lot of sponsorships. I feel like the community takes great care of this channel. You ensure through things like Patreon that we don't have to do that, and that when I want to work with a brand, it is because I want to work with the brand. It's not for the monetary side of it. And with that, I get a lot of emails asking, hey, do you want to work with our brush brand? Do you want to work with our paint brand? Do you want to do this or that? I get them daily. I get them to the point where I just can't respond to them anymore. But with that, my answer is almost always no. It's 1 out of 1,000 that I say yes to. And what really stood out to me about Craftamo was they led with the fact that it was a cruelty-free brand. And that to me just opened my heart. I love that. I know that not everybody is like this, but I don't buy real leather, I don't eat meat, and the prospect of making and releasing a brush set that is entirely animal cruelty free, that meant the world to me. And I loved the idea of that. But I hadn't tried their brushes before, and I told them that. So they sent over a bunch of samples for me to try to see if this is something that we could work on together. And they said, you know what, whatever you want to do with these, we can customize, we can make it your own. We can make this something that will actually work with your lessons specifically. And I started trying the brushes. And right off the bat, I was actually very impressed. I really loved how the bristle was held together. I loved how they didn't kind of stray out in different directions. I liked the natural give of the brushes, and I liked how light they were as well. So there was this huge confluence of positives and reasons for me to move ahead and make this. And it was just an incredible experience. A wonderful company. I have a great guy who I worked with to design everything that we did here. And I want to put emphasis on the fact that I'm a big fan of buying from companies that I believe in, that have missions that I very much align myself with. And this is one that does exactly that. I've had a painting channel for 8 years, and it is just now that I'm doing a brush collaboration, because it is just now that I have found a manufacturer and a collaborator that can do exactly what I want without compromise. So it's a special set. It is a set that is limited to 500 units. It is a set that you can purchase, again, by going to the description, clicking on that link, putting your email in, and on the 28th, you too will be able to purchase it. So that is the brush set. That is what we've been working on for 2022. And I'm really excited to get these out in your hands. I'm really excited for you to start painting with them and rendering the lessons along with me with the same tools. I think that's exciting. So I can't wait for the big release. I will be doing some demos beforehand so you can really see them in action. But again, I've really been using the prototypes, which are very similar through the last number of lessons. So you've seen what they can render, and I think they're pretty amazing. With that, thank you to Craftamo for reaching out, for being just so incredible with the collaboration process. Thank you for helping me build this channel to the point where we can collaborate on brushes and get exactly what we want and have a set for the channel. I think that's amazing. And I know that's something that you got us to. So thank you for being a part of this community. Thank you, everybody, for making this happen. I can't wait to share it. And with that, above all, as always, stay creative.